Have you ever wondered why certain truths about men and women are ignored, silenced, or labeled offensive? Why, despite all that history, psychology, and lived experience have shown us, we still cling to the belief that men and women are not only equal in value, but identical in nature, motivation, and desire? Carl Jung did not share this illusion. He believed that beneath our social masks, beneath roles and polite expectations, lie ancient forces, primordial patterns deeply embedded in the human psyche. These patterns shape how men and women see each other, desire one another, and tragically fail to truly understand each other. Jung called these unconscious forces archetypes, and one of the most powerful and most misunderstood is the anima, the inner feminine image that lives within the male psyche. While philosophers like Schopenhauer reduced women to biology and instinct, Jung went deeper. He understood that much of what men believe about women and what women unconsciously expect from men is not born from clear thought or lived truth, but from projection. We do not fall in love with who someone truly is. We fall in love with what they mirror back from our own unconscious. For Jung, this is why so many relationships begin with magic and end in confusion. A man does not initially see a woman clearly. He sees his anima, his internal image of the feminine, shaped by childhood, by dreams, by collective stories. He falls not in love with the woman, but with a symbol. And when reality pierces that illusion, disillusionment begins. But this projection isn't a mistake. It's a natural mechanism of the psyche. The danger lies in mistaking the projection for the person. Jung believed our modern world fuels this confusion. We're fed soulmate myths, fairy tale love, and the illusion of perfect compatibility, all of which obscure a deeper truth, that men and women carry within them hidden energies that clash and converge far beyond conscious awareness. The hard truth: most people don't fall in love with each other, they fall in love with their projections. And when the fantasy fades, they feel betrayed. Not because the other person changed, but because the illusion died. Jung's view of the feminine wasn't degrading, it was layered, reverent, and profoundly psychological. He didn't see women as mere biological beings, but as symbols of immense psychic force, linked to nature, the body, the moon, and the mystery of the unconscious itself. But Jung also warned, when a man projects his anima onto a woman, seeing her as a muse, a healer, or redeemer, he strips her of her full humanity. Worse, he stays trapped in psychological adolescence. The man who idealizes the feminine without integrating it remains a boy. He seeks emotional salvation instead of emotional maturity. He romanticizes rather than relates. And the woman caught in that projection often bears the weight of being someone's dream, not her own full self. This, Jung believed, is the hidden root of much relational suffering. Not hatred, not inequality, but unexamined fantasy. So what happens when these illusions begin to unravel? When a man finally sees a woman not as a goddess or an adversary, but as a human being, with her own shadows, instincts, and contradictions. That painful awakening is often the first step toward growth, but only if he has the courage to pull back the projection and face the feminine within himself. That's the part no one wants to hear. That love isn't about finding the one, it's about confronting the parts of ourselves we've abandoned. That's not romance, that's shadow work, and that requires emotional honesty. A kind of honesty our culture, with its polished dating apps, romantic comedies, and self-help slogans, rarely prepares us for. Because if the male psyche is haunted by the anima, the female psyche wrestles with her own mirror. The animus, the inner masculine image. Just as men project onto women, women project onto men. Power, safety, danger, salvation, all these inner images shape what we long for and what we fear. These mirrored projections spark attraction, but also miscommunication, resentment, and heartache. Jung didn't speak these truths to divide us. He spoke them so we could finally meet beyond the illusions. So we might stop colliding with fantasies and start relating as whole individuals. But to do that, we must begin by challenging the fantasy itself. Jung didn't believe that men and women were psychological blank slates shaped only by culture. He acknowledged upbringing, yes, but also pointed to something far older, more primal, and more difficult to face. Archetypal forces engraved in the psyche by evolution, myth, and time. To Jung, the notion that men and women are psychologically the same wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. Because when we deny the influence of instinct, biology, and the unconscious, we don't become more enlightened. We become more lost. We grow reactive, confused, and begin blaming each other for wounds we've never examined within. Schopenhauer saw women as irrational and instinctual, and dismissed them. Jung reframed that vision. He saw instinct not as inferiority, but as a profound connection to the unconscious, to nature, to the rhythms men have long feared or tried to dominate. In Jung's world, women were not shallow or purely emotional. They were guardians of the inner life, protectors of what modern life has forgotten. They carried the knowledge of the body, the wisdom of intuition, the symbolic power of the moon, the womb, and the earth, all the mysteries buried beneath a culture obsessed with reason and control. But this connection to the deep instinctual world came with its own risks. Jung believed that just as men are seduced by illusions of dominance and control, women too can be consumed by the tide of unintegrated emotion. When either side loses balance, when the unconscious overwhelms the conscious, suffering follows. In women, the unexamined animus can appear as cold logic, sharp judgment, or a controlling force. In men, the repressed anima takes other forms. The anima may emerge not as love, but as emotional chaos, projection, dependence, longing that knows no reason. These forces are not chosen. They are inherited. They live within us whether we welcome them or not. And this is why instinct, when left unexamined, becomes so dangerous. It doesn't vanish. It controls from the shadows. Much of what we call attraction, desire, even falling in love, it's not a decision. It's a movement of the psyche, a ripple from ancestral wounds, archetypal longings, unspoken needs we don't yet know how to name. Jung believed men often pursue greatness not only to succeed, but to escape the emptiness inside. That inner void, the one that whispers in quiet moments, is often filled not with feeling, but with striving, to build, to conquer, to achieve, not out of presence, but out of compensation. And when a man hasn't met the feminine within himself, hasn't integrated his anima, he seeks her in the world. He chases women who radiate softness, beauty, intuition, not only because he desires them, but because they mirror something lost, something buried deep in himself. It's not always the woman he wants. It's what she represents. This is the trap. He idealizes her, her calm, her depth, her soulfulness. But he doesn't see her, he sees his projection. And when the illusion fades, as it always does, he's left disoriented. He says she changed, but she didn't. The illusion did. Jung called this withdrawal of the projection, a painful rupture, but also the first breath of emotional maturity. Because only when the fantasy dies can a man truly see the person in front of him, not as savior, not as symbol, but as a soul, just like him, wrestling with shadows of her own. And the mirror flips. Women project too. The animus, the inner masculine, appears as the hero, the protector, the stable force. When a man echoes that image, even faintly, the pull is undeniable. But again, it's not about him. It's about the archetype, the figure living in her psyche. The man becomes a screen onto which her soul casts its oldest dreams. And just like the man, she too wakes up from the fantasy when he proves human. Flawed, fragile. She wanted the hero, she got a man. And it hurts. But Jung never said this was wrong. He said it was inevitable. These patterns are not evil. They are natural. But when left unconscious, they cause deep suffering. Instinct without awareness breeds not love, but confusion. Not connection, but resentment. So what's the path? Jung believed it wasn't about erasing gender, but integrating it. The masculine and feminine live in each of us. Only by acknowledging and honoring both can we begin to relate, not in projection, but in wholeness. He called this lifelong work individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by turning inward, meeting your own shadow, reclaiming your projections, and refusing to ask someone else to carry what is yours, to stop demanding that a lover complete you, save you, or redeem your wounds. Most never get there. They stay stuck, cycling through heartbreaks, still blaming the other for their own inner war. But those who dare, The few who do the inner work, they find something different. Relationships become mirrors, not myths, paths to healing, not battlegrounds. What most people call love, Jung believed, is not love at all, at least not at first, not the kind rooted in presence, in spiritual knowing, in clear-eyed choice. It begins as projection, a vivid illusion born of the unconscious, cast onto another, usually the opposite sex, and so compelling, so radiant, that it feels divine, soulmate, destiny, completion. But what we're really seeing is the shape of our own longing, the face of our psyche shining through someone else. For a man, this projection is the anima, the inner feminine, formed in childhood, often through the mother, then layered with myth, media, memory, and unmet desire. Over time, he forgets what women truly are. He begins to see only the symbol. And when he falls in love, he falls not for the woman herself, but for the lost part of his soul, wearing her face. Jung didn't say this to mock romance. He said it because this is how the soul calls us toward wholeness. The anima is not just a fantasy. She's a messenger. She invites the man to reclaim the emotional depth, the intuition, the tenderness he's cast aside. When he's drawn to a woman who holds those traits, it's not just about her. It's his own forgotten self beckoning. But here's the danger. Most men don't do the work. They try to possess the woman instead, to cling to her, to extract from her what they won't grow in themselves. And when she fails to remain perfect, as she must, the dream collapses. The man feels betrayed, but it was never her betrayal. It was the loss of the illusion. Jung called this moment the withdrawal of the projection. Painful, unnerving, humbling, but necessary. Because only when the fantasy falls apart can something real begin. A love rooted not in need, but in presence. Not in fantasy, but in mutual recognition. Now reverse it. Women too are caught in projection. For them it's the animus, the internal masculine, often shaped first by the father, then by cultural ideals of power, intellect, protection. He shows up in dreams as the wise guide, the warrior, the mentor, or in his shadow form, the tyrant, the critic. When a woman projects this image onto a man, he becomes more than he is. A vessel for her longing for direction, for order, for safety. And just like the man, she may not fall for him, but for what he symbolizes. Inner longing, projection, and the disillusionment of unmet ideals. What she's really yearning for isn't just a man. It's not the heroic figure she imagines standing tall against the storms of life. It's not the perfect partner who never falters, never bends, never bleeds. What she yearns for is something far more subtle, far more sacred. Inner direction, inner stability, and mental clarity. These are traits not yet fully awakened or accepted within her, and so she projects them outward onto him, the man, the other. He becomes her surrogate for the clarity she hasn't cultivated, the strength she hasn't owned, the guidance she believes she lacks. At first, this projection feels like love. It feels like destiny. It feels like she has finally found the one who will hold her together, help her make sense of the chaos within, lead her through uncertainty. but the archetype they awaken within us: the lover, the rescuer, the savior, the muse. And as long as those archetypes remain unconscious, as long as they govern our attraction from the shadows, the relationship becomes less of a partnership and more of a performance. Jung saw this dynamic play out in countless forms. Man meets woman, woman meets man, or any soul meets another in whom they sense their own lost wholeness. But what they touch is not just a person. They are touching the image of what they lack, the myth of what they hope will save them. It's why the early stages of love feel like magic, because it is magic. Projection is an enchantment cast by the unconscious, and for a time, we live inside a beautiful illusion. But illusions, by their nature, cannot last. The archetypal roles we assign to others eventually crack beneath the weight of reality. When the muse becomes moody, when the hero becomes tired, when the savior needs saving, the dream falters. And with that collapse comes pain. Not because the other betrayed us, but because the fantasy did. We were never truly seeing them. Love as a path to healing, not fantasy, projection, individuation, and the journey toward real intimacy. Love in its truest form is not a fairy tale, it is a mirror, and that mirror does not flatter. It reflects with brutal honesty the places where we are whole and the places where we are fragmented. When we fall in love, we are not just seeing the other person, we are seeing the outline of our own soul, both the beauty we long for and the wounds we have yet to heal. This is why intimacy is so terrifying. Because to truly love someone, not to idealize them, not to possess them, not to mold them into what we need, but to see them and let ourselves be seen, requires that we face our own depths. It requires that we unravel the illusions we've wrapped around our hearts like armor. Carl Jung believed that love, when approached consciously, becomes a sacred opportunity, not just for happiness, but for healing. But that healing does not come gently. It demands confrontation with the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. It asks us to withdraw the projections, to take back the images we've cast onto the other, the rescuer, the savior, the ideal partner, the emotional provider. Because the truth is, we often don't fall in love with the person themselves. We fall in love with what they symbolize. We fall for their calm because we crave peace. We fall for their fire because we've silenced our passion. We fall for their direction because we feel lost. But none of that is about them. It's about the parts of us we've disowned. The problem begins when we confuse the symbol with the substance, the projection with the person. And so, inevitably, the illusion begins to crack. The perfect partner falters. They disappoint us, not because they are flawed, but because we expected them to complete us. And in that disillusionment, we stand at a crossroads. One path leads back to bitterness and blame. The other leads forward, into the uncomfortable yet liberating work of self-awareness. Real intimacy starts when we stop trying to fix the other and start listening to the message within ourselves. What is my anger really saying? What fear hides behind my need for control? What longing have I buried beneath my criticism or withdrawal? When we dare to ask these questions, when we reclaim our anima and animus, when we integrate our shadow, when we stop using love as a drug to escape our own pain, then and only then can love begin to transform. It ceases to be a transaction, a performance, or a battleground. It becomes presence. It becomes a meeting of souls who are no longer trying to use each other, but to walk beside each other. Jung knew this path would never be popular. It is far easier to dream of romance than to do the work of awakening. But for those who accept the challenge, for those willing to truly see and be seen, love becomes something rare, raw and real. Love as transformation, not validation. Jung's uncomfortable truth about modern relationships. Love, when stripped of illusion, is not comfort. It is transformation. It is not the warm blanket we wrap around our insecurities, but the fire that burns away the falsehoods we cling to. Carl Jung never offered us a romanticized version of love. He did not promise that union between two souls would be harmonious or soothing. What he offered was far more valuable: the truth. And truth, by its very nature, disrupts. He saw through the fairy tales we're told about love, that it will complete us, rescue us, make us whole. Instead, he challenged us to see that most of what we call love is projection. It is our unconscious mind casting its unfulfilled longings onto another person, and then desperately trying to make them play a role they were never meant to play. We don't fall in love with reality. We fall in love with the dream. And when the dream ends, we call it heartbreak. But what if heartbreak is not a failure? What if it is the beginning of a deeper truth? Jung believed that heartbreak is not caused solely by the actions of the other, but by the collapse of our own illusions. The pain we feel when someone disappoints us is often the pain of facing ourselves, of realizing that the perfection we projected was never real. We grieve not just the relationship, but the fantasy. We mourn not just what we had, but what we imagined it would become. And yet this collapse is necessary, it is sacred. Because only in the breaking of the illusion can the real relationship begin. Only when we stop trying to control or idealize the other, when we no longer demand that they carry the weight of our unmet needs, can we begin to truly love, not from need, not from fear, but from presence. Jung did not advocate for sameness between the sexes. He did not erase the differences between men and women, nor did he suggest that masculine and feminine energies were interchangeable. He honored their uniqueness,